The Shelton-Mason County Chamber and our partner Mason Web TV, powered by Hood Canal Communications, is pleased to bring the candidates for the 35th Legislative District Position 2. Tonight we have with us Drew MacEwen and Darcy Huffman. Welcome. We'll begin with your introductory statements. You'll each have 2 minutes. Darcy, we will begin with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much to the Mason County Chamber and Heidi for moderating this opportunity. You know, in my opponent's voter guide statement, he says that he thinks that now is the time for experienced hand on deck. And he thinks that since he has 8 years of experience in the legislature, you should vote for him. So I have 2 questions for the voters of the 35th. So what is the most important, electing legislators with living experience or maintaining career politicians? And the second one is, what has Drew's experience done for you? So according to the US Census Bureau, 17.3% of Mason County lives below the poverty level, which is 25% higher than the rest of Washington state. And in addition, 33% of Mason County residents qualify for SNAP benefits. That's 1 in 3 families. And since this pandemic, TANF applications have increased by 90%. Is our district really doing better? Do we really have more family wage jobs, quality, affordable broadband, lower taxes, and more affordable health care? Well, from the stories that I've heard while I've been on the campaign, I'd say the answer to that is no. As a military spouse, I moved 7 times while my husband served in the country, and you might say that I learned leadership skills from the very best. For the last 9 years, I've been working as an administrator in a large faith community on top of my 25 years in the financial sector. I bring people from private groups and nonprofits together to work for the common good, and I want to do that. And so that is why I am running to be state representative. Drew said that he wants to go back to the 2017-18 budget, but we can't afford to go back to the future. We need new ideas and bold and dynamic leadership, and I'm that leader.
Thank you, Darcy. We will next hear from Drew. Drew, you will also have 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Great, thank you. I think I got a slight pause here, hold on. Okay, sorry about that, a little technical glitch. Again, thank you to the Chamber for hosting this. It's a great opportunity to talk to voters and let them hear from both of us, and I greatly do appreciate the opportunity to have this dialogue. It's been an honor to represent you over the last 8 years, and I look at the accomplishments we've had and how much work we still have left to do. And on my background, I came out here via the Navy in the mid-90s, served in the nuclear submarine force. And when I got out of the Navy, I went into the business field, and I've been in that since 1998, founded my company in 2001. And I'm very proud of that, and that has afforded me the opportunity to, over time, invest in other businesses in our district, you know, whether it's the restaurant industry or real estate within Mason, Kitsap, and Thurston counties. That's given me a great hands-on experience, and I think one of the things that's greatly lacking in Olympia are folks that have signed the front of a paycheck, and I've done that. And the military background that I have, and that always striving to have the very best be put forward, is something that I continue to do. And I look at the accomplishments we've had. We've done reforms to K-12 on a bipartisan basis. We've had significant capital improvement budgets, capital improvements done in our district, whether it's the sewer in Shelton, the sewer extension in North Mason going into Kitsap, revitalizing the Turner Joy, the soccer fields in Thurston County, the Deschutes Hatchery and the Deschutes Brewery that is now part of the Puget Sound Community College. We put a lot of investments in that just were not existing before, and I'm very proud of that work. We've still got work to do to ensure we have a strong K-12 system, that we're accountable to you, the taxpayers, for the money that you send to us, and that we continue to push forward to have a strong economy. And I look forward to continuing that bipartisan track record and representing you in Olympia. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. We will now move into the questions that the Chamber has prepared for you. As Darcy began with her introduction, we'll begin with Drew. Drew, you'll have 1 minute to answer this, and Darcy, you'll then have a minute to respond or to answer the same question. Drew, you will have the opportunity for a 30-second response if you choose. The first question is, in 2018, shortly after the legislative session adjourned, the State Department of Labor and Industries began looking at Washington's overtime exemption minimum salary via rulemaking. The outcome was to increase the annual salary from just over $35,000 to more than $78,000 in 2028, an increase of 221% in less than 10 years. Given the current unemployment rates and the hardships caused by COVID-19, do you believe that the minimum wage and salary should still increase at that rate? Darcy, you'll have 1 minute to respond.
Thank you for the question, Heidi. This has continued to a theme that we've seen come out of Olympia over the last number of years, and that is government imposing mandates on private citizens, on private businesses, but then exempting itself. And the great example on this is the overtime wage law that's being pushed forward for salaried employees. This will have a detrimental impact on nonprofit organizations specifically, but also on small businesses where that flexibility is needed. And you have an employee that maybe 1 week puts in 25 hours, but the following week they're doing 65. And you see that with nonprofits as well. And if this overtime rule on salaried employees goes into effect, that'll be detrimental to a lot of those organizations. And what's ironic is the state exempts itself from it because they know it doesn't work. We've got to allow for the free market to continue to go forward. And if we're going to do things like this, then the state should be in the same seat.
Thank you. Darcy, you'll now have 1 minute to respond.
This is a problem. Wage theft is a problem. There are people who work enormous amount of hours and don't get paid for the overtime that they should. Yes, COVID has created a very hardship for many employers, and perhaps we should take a look at making this not happen immediately, but happen in the future. But wage theft is never okay, even if it creates hardships sometimes to employers, because employees are the ones who really pay for wage theft. So I think it might be a great time to revisit this. I would not be opposed to doing that, but I am actually for the workers, and again, wage theft is a real issue, and we need to stop it now.
Thank you, Darcy. Drew, you have. Oh, sorry about that. Wait. Drew, you'll have another 30 seconds if you would like to respond.
Yes, thank you. And again, I think that shows the disconnect that we see from the Democrat Party in this state, and that is throwing on mandates in the private sector, but exempting itself at the state level, and expecting somehow that that's going to work itself out. As a business owner, I can tell you again that flexibility is so needed. I've got an employee that at times will work very minimal hours, and the following week works a significant amount. And having been on the board for the Chamber of Commerce as an example, we know that those hours fluctuate greatly. And you have to have that flexibility, and the state's taking that away and again exempting itself, and that is just not a touch approach.
Thank you. The next question that we've prepared tonight, Darcy, we'll have you answer first. You will have 1 minute. Next year is a budget year in Olympia. There will surely be dozens and dozens of individuals and groups in your office with requests. What is your #1 priority for funding Mason County? This can be either capital or operating.
Great question. Well, we are required by law to fully fund our education. And unfortunately, education always takes a hit when we have downturns like we've had right now. So funding our education will be my #1 priority. We are going to need to have some extraordinary funding with kids staying at home, with teachers not being able to see their kids. This is an unprecedented time, and now is not the time to be cutting our education budget. I also think that food insecurity is a huge thing for us, and with more and more people requiring food security in an economic downturn like we have now, those will be my 2 most important things. No kid should ever have to go to bed hungry, and they all require and deserve a full education for their future. And we're just going to have to make sure that that happens.
I don't hear you, Heidi, but I know it's my turn to respond there. So, yeah, my priority, it's our paramount obligation to fully fund K-12 education as is enshrined in our state constitution. And since the day I took office, I've been an advocate that we fund education first. We don't hold it hostage to other programs, but yet that's what's been done by this administration and the majority party for the last 8 years. So I'm going to be a strong advocate that we fund K-12 first on the operating side. On the capital budget side, we've got to fix the rural broadband issue. That is tremendous, and again, we've made strides on a bipartisan basis there to get it moving, but we've got to move faster. And those are 2 top priorities: is the schools, rural broadband, but at the same time, we cannot raise taxes and fees on the backs of working Washingtonians. That is not the way to go. We need to rein in the spending that's increased dramatically over the last 8 years under this administration. So I look forward to working on those as a member of appropriations and getting the job done.
Thank you, Drew. Darcy, you'll have 30 seconds for final thoughts.
Well, I'm in 100% agreement that rural broadband is a necessity. It is urgent that we fix this. And unfortunately, I'm going to tell you that my own party has not fixed it, and Drew's party has not helped either. It has really taken this catastrophic event in order for everybody to get off their dime and to fix this problem. And it is not going to be a problem that is going to be easy to fix or fast to fix, but we must do everything we can to make sure that we have broadband that we need to have for businesses and schools and healthcare and everything that we now know that broadband is the most important part of our communications process. So let's get off the dime and let's get it done.
Thank you, Darcy. So our next question, you will each have 1 minute to share your response. I'm going to bring both of you up and take myself down. Drew, will have you begin. There will be no rebuttal for this question. So the first question, well, this question is, if you could pass one bill in the legislature or in the next legislative session, what would it be and why? Drew, we'll hear from you first.
Yeah, that we fund education first as the first item on the agenda when we go into session. I've advocated for that since I first took office, and in doing that, you don't hold education hostage to the other budgetary items that come. We've had a tendency in Olympia to do a whole bunch of policy and then try to squeeze it into a budget in the final 10 days of session. That's a horrible way to do it, and it's a process that has not worked. We need to fund education first, do it immediately, make sure that we're fully meeting those needs and fulfilling our paramount duty, and then from there, we work on the rest of the budget. But time and again, we've seen it take second seat to just about everything else, and so that would be continues to be one of my top priorities, and I look forward to continuing to work on that.
Thank you, Drew. Darcy, you'll also have 1 minute.
So I kind of hate to agree with Drew, but I am going to on this. Education is the #1 thing that we need to fund, but we can't fund education if we don't know what it looks like. So that's sort of like saying, okay, well, here we have $100 to fund this, but we don't know what we're going to spend it on. So we really need to have programs in place before we can do the budget. But I do agree that education needs to be the #1 item on the agenda every single budget year. And in years when we do supplemental budgets, education supplemental budgets need to be put on the priority. But we also need to figure out a better way of funding our school system. We just cannot continue to fund all of the things that we want to fund by income tax or by sales tax and property tax. We need to find a new way and innovative way of funding everything that we need to fund in our school system.
Thank you so much. With that, we will begin to present the questions that you have prepared for one another. Darcy, I'll begin with a question that Drew has prepared for you. You will have 90 seconds to respond. Drew, you'll then have 30 seconds to clarify or reply. And then Darcy, you'll have 30 seconds to rebut. The first question is, of the $54,301 that you've raised, over 62% of it has come from contributions outside the 35th district. Including campaign debt, over 82% of the contributions are not from residents of the 35th. How can you claim to represent their views? Darcy, you'll have 90 seconds.
Well, just because the money doesn't come out of the 35th doesn't mean that I don't know the views of being a rural American. I grew up in Snohomish and in rural Kansas, so I know everything there is to know. Well, not everything there is to know, but a lot about living in a rural community. Yes, much of my money comes from friends and family, and when you live on the edge of a district, you tend to have friends and family who live outside of the district. As you know, Mason County is a pretty poor district. So especially with 33% of the people being able to qualify for SNAP program. But my family and my friends support me, and they know that I'm going to do what is right for the 35th and for rural voters. Unfortunately, I don't have all the businesses that you have, Drew, in order to and PACs that you have, like Amazon and drug companies and beer and wine and business organizations like that to fund me. So I've had to go to friends and family, and I have no problem with that. And I will represent the members of the 35th. With everything that I do, because I know what it's like to live in rural America.
Thank you, Darcy. Drew, you'll have 30 seconds to respond or clarify your question.
Yeah, thanks. I think it just speaks a lot, though, to what a base of support is, and I look at where our differences lie, and also where our fundraising goes. I have no problem. We all raise money from friends and family. That's common. I mean, my mom sent me $40 from Wisconsin. That doesn't put me over the top, but I'm very grateful for it. But it's the everyday folks here in the district that have contributed to my campaign and or have voted through their organization.
Thank you, Drew. Darcy, you'll have 30 seconds if you have any other comments.
So the 35th Dems have put a fundraiser together for me and raised for myself and for Colton, and raised over $9,000 in that fundraiser. So I think I have more than enough support in Mason County and in the 35th in order that they know that I'm going to represent them, and they are very supportive of my campaign and my ideas, and I have no problem with that.
Thank you, Darcy. Drew, here's a question that Darcy has prepared for you. By some measures, you have voted with business interest 100% of the time. Meanwhile, your voting record for clean air and clean water hovers at only 4%. Why is there such a disparity? Drew, you'll have 90 seconds to respond.
Yeah, thank you. Quite frankly, because there's been a lack of balance in this state, and what we've seen for quote clean energy bills has been nothing but a tax scheme on the citizens of this state to do something that is not going to have a significant impact on the overall quality of the environment in our state, and that's the wrong approach. And instead of bringing people to the table, the other side of the aisle continues to jam bills down that are rejected by initiative, oftentimes at the ballot by the voters of this state, including the carbon tax. If we really want to have a clean environment, and I think we're all for that, right? But if we want to do that, then let's do that on a bipartisan basis, and let's work together. But that's not what has happened in Olympia. The Democrat Party has said, we know what's best for you, citizens of Washington, and we're gonna put this down your throat. And they wonder then why the citizens of this state reject their measures time and again at the ballot. And I stand with the people of this district. We've seen the rural district continue to have to pay for the ideas that are not proven by the people of Seattle. And I will stand with the people of the 35th district and continue to support those views. And, when we want to talk about environmental issues, every one of us is for clean water, clean air. That is without question, but yet you reject the timber industry and what they've done for carbon sequestration within the state, and you vilify them. That's not the right approach. And we wonder why we've got massive forest fires, because we haven't taken care of the lands that we have. And that is what has happened under 30 plus years of one-party rule in this state, and that has to change.
Thank you, Drew. Darcy, you'll now have 30 seconds to respond or clarify.
Thanks. So I reject this whole false premise that there is a choice between jobs and the environment. I don't think that that's true at all. I think that we can do walk and chew gum at the same time. And I believe that clean energy jobs are exactly what we need to have in Mason County and Thurston County and Kitsap County. And we can do that while protecting our clean air and our clean water. And we just need to be creative.
Thank you, Darcy. Drew, any other questions or any other comments? If so, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I don't think it is a choice between the two. It's not one or the other. You're comparing a voting record. By the way, I don't have a 100% voting record with business interests. It's below that. I'm not afraid to go against my own party or to go against my typical supporters. But I do reject this notion that we can only take a one-sided approach to the environment, and that's what has happened in Olympia, and that's why these vote numbers get skewed. And if we want to work together, let's do that.
Thank you both. Darcy, here is the next question that Drew has prepared for you. You stated that housing can be made affordable with the existing inventory. How do you reconcile that when demand outweighs supply? You have 90 seconds to respond.
I don't believe that I did state that housing can be made affordable with the existing inventory. You are right. There is the demand does outweigh the supply, but what we can do is create new housing and increase that inventory. And what we also can do is increase wages. I mean, wages are the whole thing of why people can't afford housing is because they're not paid enough. And if we had more family wage jobs, if we had more clean energy jobs, if we had more manufacturing jobs in Mason County and Kitsap County and Thurston County, then people can really afford to own a home or to even rent. Only about 25% of people in Mason County rent their homes. People move to Mason County to live in a home with 5 acres around them. That's exactly what they do. And we cannot build ourselves one family home at a time out of this crisis. We need to have some multifamily units, and we need to make sure that they are fast, that they are put up fast, and that they are affordable for everybody. So I think it would go a really long way if we could have more family wage jobs in our district.
Thank you, Darcy. Drew, you have 30 seconds to respond or to clarify.
There we go. So Darcy, that statement that brings that question was a statement you made in the League of Women Voters that we had the debate in June with Thurston County. But I think your statement also though speaks to the crux of the issue. We haven't reformed GMA. That was done when we had 4 million people in this state. Today there's over 7.5 million, and your party's rejected reforms. I had a latecomers fee to have that waived. That would have helped development outside of Shelton, but the governor's administration vetoed that in the transportation budget. We have made time and time again proposals that continue to get rejected to
Thank you, Drew. Darcy, if you have any other comments, you have 30 seconds.
You're absolutely right. The GMA is outdated and it needs to be renewed. And I happen to know that it is on the Democrats' agenda for this session in order to be able to review that. And I think that we need to have some new ideas, and we have new technology. We have a responsibility to the farmers and to the logging industry in order to review that so that we can get more housing available at a cheaper price.
Thank you, Darcy. Drew, here's the next question that Darcy has prepared for you. You vote consistency against bills that deal with extreme protection orders, which our state's law enforcement agencies have consistently supported. Why is this?
Yeah, quite simply, once again, we've seen bills like this come before us that are one-sided, that do not take into account other viewpoints, and that get jammed through the legislature. And at the end of the day, what's happened in these with these laws that have been proposed is that it's removing due process. Due process is a key component to our Constitution, both at the federal and the state level. And I took an oath to defend and support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Washington. And I don't believe that these bills that have gone forward, when you remove due process and don't have an avenue to have redress, that is a major problem. And that puts us down the proverbial slippery slope if we're going to go and we're going to enact laws and legislation that remove constitutional protections.
Thank you. Darcy, you now have 30 seconds if you'd like to clarify or respond.
The most dangerous call that a law enforcement officer makes is one to a domestic violence call. And many times these calls are made with people who are armed and basically holding hostage, usually women hostage. And in order for the woman to be safe and law enforcement to be safe, removing a gun from this situation does not seem like due process for the woman.
Thank you, Darcy. Drew, you have 30 seconds if you have any other thoughts on the issue.
Yeah, again, due process is a key component to our federal and state constitution, and just because you think that it should be different doesn't make it so. And I'm proud to, and I stand by law enforcement, and I'm proud to have their support and have the endorsement from WA cops, from our sheriffs and state police. Those, you know, to suggest that I'm not that I'm going somehow against law enforcement is inaccurate. And I'm proud to have those endorsements, especially in this time when you got the other side screaming to defund police.
Thank you, Drew. Darcy, the next is a question that Drew has prepared for you. Do you support the voter-approved legislation of $30 car tax? You'll have 90 seconds to reply.
Well, the voters spoke loud and clear. And so while I may not like it, I have to support it. And so we are just going to need to find a different way of funding the programs that were removed because of these $30 car tabs. And one of those programs actually has to do with transportation, medical transportation for people who need to have special transportation for say like dialysis and who can't afford a private car in order to take them to that. And so that is something that sometimes I don't think voters really realize just exactly what kinds of things are going to be cut because they're tired of paying taxes. I get it. I'm tired of paying taxes too. I am tired that people on the low end of our scale pay 18% of their wages and earnings in taxes, while the 1% pay 3%. So I think we need to do something about our unfair tax laws, and I guess we're going to start with the $30 car tabs.
Thank you, Darcy. Drew, you have 30 seconds if you'd like to clarify or respond.
Yeah, one of the greatest things we can do for folks with lower incomes is lower these outrageous registration fees. That would go a long ways in helping a lot of people. And then to how do we fund the transportation budget is certainly the follow-up question. And I've got a proposal out for the last couple of years that we take the sales tax revenue from car sales and use that to fund transportation. There's a direct nexus there. We implement that over the course of 10 years, so it's not a dramatic impact from to the operating budget immediately, but we can do this.
Thank you, Drew. Darcy, any other comments? If so, you have 30 seconds.
So my question to Drew would be, what are the other programs that you're going to cut? So if you take the sales tax from automobiles and put that into highways, what are you going to cut? Is it going to be food? Is it going to be rent assistance? Is it going to be health care? Where else are you? What are we going to pay for that? And I just think it needs to be something different.
Thank you, Darcy. Drew, here's a question that Darcy's prepared for you. You've said that you will work across the aisle for our district, even co-sponsoring the historic long-term services and support program, which assists future generations with their long-term care costs. When it came time to vote, you voted with your party against it. Why is this? You'll have 90 seconds to respond.
Yep, and I will answer this, but I'm going to go back since Darcy asked me a question there on how you implement that. You don't do it in the first biennium. You do it over the course of 10 years, and through economic growth, we can absorb that change. When I came in the office at the same time Governor Inslee did, the budget was $34 billion. Today it's $55 billion. You're telling me that in that time period we couldn't find a way to do this? We could have. And it's always, and I reject the Democrat scare tactics that, oh, you're going to lose food and you're going to lose shelter because we're going to do something different. And that's just not the way to govern. But to the question on long-term care, yeah, I was actually a sponsor of it and helped shepherd this bill through. But when it came down, and I voted for it on the first go around, but when it came back from the Senate with changes that have been made, we lost some protections for small business owners and self-employed for the ability to opt out, and also for people that have an existing healthcare plan, long-term care plan. There were provisions there that were lost in that process, and this happens in the legislature. I've had some of my own bills that I've voted against in committee. This happens because other legislators can make changes to things. So what went from a bipartisan effort, again, became lopsided. And this is why it is important that we get back to a balance of power in this state, and so that we can represent all ideas from both sides.
Thank you, Drew. Darcy, you'll have 30 seconds to respond or to clarify.
So I understand that things get changed, but I understand that there are a lot of protections still for small businesses and for nonprofits. As a matter of fact, that bill was implemented while I was the administrator of a nonprofit, and we chose to participate in that because it's the right thing to do. So just because it isn't the perfect bill doesn't mean that you have to throw it out.
Drew, any other thoughts? If so, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, it is tough to craft good legislation, perfect legislation. It is tough to do that. And that's why experience matters. But again, we've seen this time and again, especially in the last 2 years, where the Democrat Party has rejected other ideas from the vast geographical area of this state and said, your voice doesn't matter. And then they wonder why they're losing seats in rural Washington. That is the reality of what's happened in Olympia. And I'm going to continue to be a strong voice for my constituents and go forward.
Thank you. That concludes our candidates' questions for one another. With that, we'll move into closing statements. Drew, we'll hear from you first, and you will have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you to the Chamber for hosting this and continues to be a phenomenal year, and not in a good way necessarily. We've had challenges through this, but and I want to thank Darcy. It's nice to actually have a civilized debate, unlike what we saw last night, and be able to have these conversations and to have differences. There is nothing wrong with that. What's important is to be able to articulate those differences and come together and find common ground. And I'm proud of that bipartisan track record that I've developed over the last 8 years in the legislature with friends on both sides of the aisle. And that doesn't mean that I always go lockstep with my party or that I'll always vote against the other parties. My track record speaks to that very loudly. And as a business owner in this district, having to sign the front of a paycheck and going through this COVID crisis and seeing firsthand what happens with employees and the uncertainty that's out there, and being able to navigate through this, regardless of the burdens that Olympia has put on us, is an important aspect to have when it comes to governing in Olympia and for the state of Washington. I look forward to continuing to serve, and I'm asking for your vote in the coming weeks here as we lead up to the November 3rd election. And it has been one of the greatest honors to represent you in Olympia. And I look forward to continuing to do that and working on the issues that are important to you. The constituent calls that I've gotten into my office over the past few months with the unemployment crisis that's going on and the lack of leadership from this administration in dealing with that, and to be able to help the number of folks that we've had to help shepherd through and get the benefits, the safety net that they deserve and need has been tremendous. We've got a lot of work to do still, and that is why I am running again, and I ask for your vote. And again, I thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. Darcy, you will also have 2 minutes in closing.
Yeah, thank you so very much. And I agree with Drew. It really is nice to be able to have a conversation with somebody without interruption. And I appreciate that for sure. So I think Drew really hit it on the head when he said that more and more Democrats are being voted out, rural Democrats are being voted out. And you know what that means? It means that there are fewer and fewer voices in the room where things really happen at the table. So if you want rural America or rural Washington, if you want the 35th to be heard, then you need to put somebody in that room where decisions are being made. It doesn't do any good to stand outside of the room and shout at the top of your lungs and say, no, 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 that's not good for my district. What you need is somebody like me in the room that can stand up for the residents of the 35th, for the constituents of the 35th. And I'm going to be that person. Jimmy Carter once said that every day that you're given a block of wood, and it's your choice whether or not to build a wall or to build a bridge. Well, I am a bridge builder. I have done that my entire life. I have worked in a community where women were not welcome very often. And if you think that you don't have to build a whole lot of bridges when you're an administrator of a big church, then you don't know what it's like to be an administrator of a big church. I have a proven record of being able to bring people together, to bring nonprofits and businesses together, and to work with the legislature in order to pass laws that make significant differences in people's lives. And I would be very much appreciative if I could earn your vote and be ready to do that on day one when I walk into the legislature as your representative. Thanks so much for your time tonight, and please take care.
Thank you, Darcy. We'll bring Drew back up.
Okay.
I'd like to thank you both for participating with us tonight. It's been nice to hear answers from both of you and see where you stand on different platforms and issues. It was a pleasure to hear from you, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Heidi. Take care. Thanks, Drew. Take
Thank
care.
you.